Good morning. Welcome everybody from Armadillo and GoProposal. Thank you for joining us, whether you're joining live or you're listening to a recording later. We really appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully we're able to share some real value with you today. In return, we expect this to take about 2 hours. So everybody at the moment, if there's everybody's muted initially on coming on, so you can unmute yourself, but if there's questions, raise your hand to ask or take yourself off mute. I do have one survey that I plan to run today. Other than that, there's no breakout rooms or anything like that. So for those that don't know Armadillo, I wanted to just explain a tiny little bit about Armadillo, if that's okay. First of all, my name is Gordon Berry, for those that don't know me, and I'm joined today by my co-director, Matt Hall, who's with me and keeping an eye on making sure everything runs smoothly. And also for anybody that can't understand me, Matt is here to interpret. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Gordon. Good morning, everybody. Yes, subtitles will appear at the bottom page 888 for those of a certain vintage.
Very good. So Armadillo is about supporting accountants with business development, tax support, people development, really non-technical, and well-being. And the focus today obviously is practice development with a little bit of people development. We're also delighted to be joined by Chris Johnson from GoProposal, who's going to take us through a little presentation a little later on. Good morning, Chris. Thanks for joining us. So the topic today is how to make more money from existing clients and maintain positive relationships. So we'll hopefully have a little bit of fun with the idea of maintaining relationships whilst agreeing fees. When done well, this is really just about helping someone to reach a decision where you can feel comfortable and feel like you're getting good value for a fair exchange. So the focus today is practice development, and this is our proposed agenda. Busyness versus business, get the pricing right, what creates growth, how would it change your practice? If I can just tell you a little bit about my own background, because I believe it's relevant. I am an accountant myself, chartered certified accountant, qualified in 1994 when I was about 10 years old, I think. My father before me was a chartered accountant. I took over his very traditional practice back in 2002. And to be frank, it wasn't very profitable. It had marketed itself for years on being the cheapest in town. People got round to paying eventually, but probably after they'd been chased with 1, 2, or 3 letters. And I set about, when I took it over, I set about building it up to be more profitable. And then I sold it in 2009. And I sold it because I'd also qualified as an NLP coach and hypnotherapist. And I had an interest in psychology, and I wanted to get out from behind the desk and work one-to-one, just doing business development with clients who actually appreciated what I did. Nice people who were happy to spend money and just wanted me to spend a day with them, helping them grow their business. It was a little bit more challenging when the previous business, the accountancy business, had been marketed on being the cheapest in town. What you tended to attract was people that were simply focused on price. So I sold that business in 2009. Subsequently, I was asked to come back and help run an accountancy network. I'd been a member myself for quite a few years, and that had really helped my own growth. So that's now what I do. I also run a very small practice, but we're quite selective with who we take on as clients. And I probably make more profit from those fewer clients than I originally made when I took over that original accountancy practice. So what I'm going to do is share with you a few of the learnings that I had that helped me build that practice to be more profitable. And it helped me to find clients who paid me on average about 4 times what I might have earned simply from doing compliance work. Probably on average about 4 times what I would have earned from just doing their accounts and their tax return. So hopefully that agenda looks all right. Sounds okay and ready to get into it. Interestingly, when something is important enough to us, we almost always find a way. I once heard Tony Robbins say there are no lazy people, just unmotivated people. And it's interesting how we always find time for the things that interest us. Enthusiasm brings energy. You could be laying around all day complaining of feeling tired, and then someone comes along and suggests doing something that you really love doing. Suddenly, you've got energy for it. Your energy levels change, they rise. In my experience, many accountancy practices are set up charging too low fees, trying to service too many clients, oftentimes for things that clients don't even want. Accounts, tax, VAT, bookkeeping, a little bit of a grudge purchase. Sorry to break that to you, but not many people get up in the morning and say, I think I'll go and buy myself a tax return today. So it's not lighting them up, and it's not lighting us up if that's the approach of the clients, and it can destroy that enthusiasm. There's an argument that everyone wants to do meaningful work and feel recognized for it. It feeds our soul. If you feel that you have your pricing right and that you're being aptly rewarded and you're doing meaningful work and it's appreciated, then you feel encouraged, enthused. If you think about your figures in your own firm, how many clients you have times the average fee is your turnover? How many clients does your firm have per partner? How many hours are the partners working? What difference would it make to you if you could double the fees and half the number of clients? How many hours would you get back? How many hours are you really working? And how would that change your life? Much as we like to think of ourselves as logical, we're all driven by emotion. We all respond with emotion and then try to explain actions away with logic. If you think you don't buy an emotion, go home tonight and check your closet for anything that you don't actually need. We as accountants are meant to be the most logical of people, but even we do that. So imagine what it's like for everyone else. And we're guilty of assuming that everyone thinks like us, but they don't. What happens with business owners is we put all our love and energy into our product and we take it to the customer. And when someone complains about price, it hurts. It's like they've reached across and slapped you. It really feels like it hurts. And when you've been slapped, logic goes out the window. So the next time we go along with our product, in which we put all our love and energy, we remember that slap. And we think, oh, I don't want that again. And maybe I'll just go in a little bit lower with the price. But inevitably, somebody somewhere says, how much? It's like we've been slapped again. So the next time we go in a bit lower and a bit lower, and it becomes a downward spiral. The hurt wasn't a physical slap. It was what we said to ourselves when we were asked how much, or told that's a bit expensive. Our own self-dialogue affects how we feel. How we feel affects how we behave. and how we behave then impacts our results. The question, how much, might be the only question that the client knows to ask. They're not experts in accounts or tax, so what else are they going to ask? They have to ask something. They can't just sit there. Or maybe it's the silence that we don't like, because we fill that silence with our own internal dialogue. If we could learn to take control of that self-dialogue, then we can learn to control our own responses. If someone says it's too expensive, they must be comparing it with something. But they might not be comparing like with like. If they believe they are comparing like with like, we were having a chat this morning before we started about going into an expensive restaurant. If you think the product's exactly the same as you could have got down the road at a much cheaper restaurant, then the only thing left to compare is price. But you might not be comparing like with like. We'll come on to that a little bit more. So, I wanted to share with you something that when I first learned it, it seemed so blindingly obvious. I couldn't believe nobody had shared it with me before. But it made a big difference to my approach. The breakdown in most relationships is due to a breakdown in rapport and communication. Most people leave a job not because of the work, but due to relationship issues. So how do you build rapport? Well, what I learned, I just think I should have realized, but it only becomes obvious after somebody says it to you, is that we only have 5 senses: sight, sound, touch, smell, taste. If you can't see it, hear it, touch it, smell it, taste it, does it exist? Not in your world, it does. So this is how we take information in. We can't do it any other way. But interestingly, most people have a preferred sense. They tend to rely on one sense more than the others. We all do all of these things. NLP calls it visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory. That's what the initials are for. So people will give you clues as to what their preferred sense is, both in how they look and their use of language. If you could pick up on those clues and communicate with them in their own preferred sense, then it helps build rapport. And it's largely unconscious. They're not aware that they're leaning on or have a preference for one sense or another. Let me see if I can explain this a bit further. A person who has a preferred sense of visual, sight, wants to see how your proposal looks. You need to paint them a picture, make it clear and bright. They'll tell you in the language. They might say, well, I can't see how that's going to work. It just doesn't look right to me. I'm a bit hazy on parts of it. If you can respond with the same type of predicates, then you're literally speaking their language. If you respond saying, let me show you a bit more, we'll see if we can help make things a bit clearer. Unconsciously, they think, they're just like me. They see things my way. See what I'm saying? Also, you can often get clues from how people dress. A visual person tends to be far more likely to take pride in their appearance. It's what's important to them. They tend to talk fast, talk from the top of their lungs because they're literally thinking in pictures. A person who's more auditory, the sort of person who maybe cocks their head to the side to hear you better. I had a friend in the previous accountancy network I was in who did that. The minute you started talking to him, his head went over to one side. They're literally trying to hear you better. It turned out he was also a keen musician. The auditory sense was what was important to him. So an auditory person is listening to hear if something just clicks for them. They want to tune in and hear if your plan sings to them. What is important is how you say it as much as what you say. They might tell you things are not just not ringing true. You can almost hear the thud as your plan hits the wall. So you want to create harmony with what you're saying. Make sure you're working from the same hymn sheet. Someone whose preferred sense is more touch, feel. They like to be able to get a handle on how this is going to work. They want something concrete, something they can hang their hat on. Gut feeling might be telling them this isn't going to work. You're going to have to get down and dirty. Give them something they can grasp. Unlike the visual person, they're not as concerned about their appearance. They just want to be comfortable. They probably won't move quite as fast or talk quite as fast. They like to get in touch with their feelings during the communication. Get a feel of what I'm saying? Smell and taste don't come into it quite so much unless they're maybe in the catering industry or perfume or wine tasting. But although we all tend to use all five senses, we tend to have a preference. And people like them. If you use the same language as them, then you become like them. And it's not necessarily conscious. Unconsciously, they're getting the message. He or she is just like me. And people like them. If you think about it, this is where things go wrong when we move from dating to marriage. When you were dating, you made an effort to tick all those boxes. You made an effort with your appearance. You said the right things in the right way. You wanted to be close to the other person and touch them a lot. You made an effort with smell. Once you're married, you go back to your preferred sense and they go to theirs. You picture the scene. The visual wife's been out for a nice glass of wine with the girls. Comes home. She's looking immaculate. Kinesthetic, touchy-feely husband has been working under the car all morning. He wants a hug, but she's not about to cuddle that dirty, crumpled mess that's let himself go. Not like when they were dating. It might be visual husband and auditory wife. She says, you never tell me you love me anymore. He says, but look at all the things I buy, the places I take you, the gifts I give you. She says, yeah, but you never tell me you love me. It's a breakdown in communication because they're using their own preferred sense. NLP says that the person with the most flexibility controls the system. So they reckon about 40% of the population have a preference for their visual sense. This is probably based on American statistics, to be fair. And you can maybe see that 40% of the population would be more visual. But the figures probably aren't that far off for the UK. So when you present a set of accounts to your client, does it visually stimulate them? They reckon about 20% of the population are more auditory. And that's split 50-50 between auditory external sound, and auditory internal, what we call auditory digital. Auditory digital is more internal sound. So it's a lot of internal dialogue and everything's logical, sequential, analytical. So when you're speaking to your clients about their accounts or the tax return, does it sing to them? About 40% of the population are more touchy-feeling, like to be able to get their hands in about things, like to be able to hold on to things, or they're in touch with their emotions. So when you're presenting your set of accounts to somebody, and it's black and white type on cheap, nasty paper and no cover, it's not even nice to the touch. We're literally speaking to about 10% of the population. And then we get together with other accountants and complain, what's wrong with these other people? People are weird. If you think about the lifetime value of a client, what is the lifetime value of a good client for you? Someone you want to work with, communicate well with, pays on time, values what you do. If an average fee is £3,000 and the profit in that is £1,000, if they stay 5 years, then they're worth maybe £5,000. What would you be willing to pay to get them on board and keep them? Is it worth taking the time to think about how we can communicate with people using their own language? How are we doing for time? Okay. So you see what I mean? Does that sound right? Am I making sense? How do we feel about this?